All right. So hello, welcome everybody. Some information for anyone who's a new attendee today. The Academy Chat Series is a long-standing webinar series by and for academies of science. We often invite external speakers or highlight individual academies, but today we'll be facilitating a discussion about a topic of interest to many member academies, and that's the junior academies. This discussion may span additional topics, but we hope to cover topics related to AJAS alumni and more broadly, how AJAS programming relates to the Academies of Science missions in general. My name is Bridget Moran, and I serve as the AJAS Program Manager for NAAS, and will be the facilitator and moderator for today's session. Please take a moment and update your name in Zoom to include your Academy affiliation and your name. So before we begin the discussion, we will have our attendees, I'll introduce themselves individually in a minute, but for all of our attendees, just to get an idea of everybody's familiarity with AJAS, could you please raise your hand if you have sent students to an AJAS meeting before? You can just do it with your hand or use the emote. Joseph, you've sent students to AJAS?
Yeah, sometime
Anyone
back.
else?
I'm sorry.
What did you say?
I was just saying it was sometime back, not in the last couple of years.
Oh, okay. Okay. So, and then Amal, I see thumbs up. I assume that means that you have sent AJS to a meeting before, students there. Okay, so next, could you please raise your hand if you've attended an AJS meeting before? Yeah, okay. Awesome. And now, Amal, if you could take down your emote, because I have one last question for hand raising. Um, could you please raise your hand if you will be attending an AJAS meeting in the future? We hope so. Awesome.
Not sure.
So, what was that?
Not sure.
Not sure. Well, I hope we can convince you in one way or another. It's a great experience. But since we have a small group today, let's take time for introductions of each of our attendees. Um, so when you are called, please state your name, your location, your role within your academy, the status of your junior academy, if it's active or not active, how many years it's been active, and what you are hoping to learn from today's panelists. Just brief introductions. I will pop that information in the chat for you to follow along, and let's start with Philip.
Well, hello, everybody. I believe I know a lot of the people here. I am Philip Winchell. I'm the archivist of the NAAS, and I have been working with the AJAS in various roles for about a decade now. And I am also an AJAS fellow from 1983 in Detroit, Michigan. And going in and out of focus over here is my wife, Pam. I am just really excited to see these faces here today.
Phil, you want to choose somebody to go next?
Oh, sure. I'm going to go over to Mike Skipstead.
Oh.
All right, dang, that was quick. I'm going now, or?
Well, let's our panelists are going to be Michael Skipston, Caroline, Chase, and Eleanor for this time. At this time, let's just get to know our attendees first, and then we'll introduce our panelists. So let's jump to Joseph.
Yes, I'm Dr. Joseph A. Cameron from Jackson State University in Jackson, Mississippi. I am with regard to the Mississippi Academy of Science, I am the representative for the AAAS, NAAS, and AJAS for years, and I have attended meetings over the years. We are working on developing some additional involvement and programs with the AJS, so I'm needing to work with some people on that. But with regard to the overall program, I've been involved for years. for representing the state of Mississippi.
Well, we are happy to have you, Joseph.
This is Jackson, Mississippi, by the way.
Awesome. Would you like to call someone else when you're done?
Carolyn.
Oh, she's one of our
Caroline
panelists.
Kabaski, Ohio.
Sharp. Yeah, she's one of our panelists. We'll hop to our panelists in a second. How about we hop to Ellen? Ellen, would you like to take some time for an introduction?
Hello, happy to be here. Ellen Buckner. I'm from the Alabama Academy of Science. I have a lot of roles, one of which is a trustee, one of which is the chair of a Gorgas competition, which is for high school seniors. And it is done at the same meeting as the junior academy for us. Our junior academy dates back to the 1930s, and as far as I know, it's never been interrupted. Even during wartime, the senior academy kept going. So did the junior academy. I am happy to be here, and two things I would like to just many of y'all know already. We did a virtual regional interregional competition in late April. I'm happy to elaborate on it at any point. And also I'm here to learn more about our AJAS, and I'm the Alabama delegate, and I'm going to popcorn over to my other Alabama delegate, Adrian Ludwig.
Yes, hi, I'm Ellen's alter ego here. I am also a long-standing member of the Alabama Academy of Science, and one of my current role, that's most active one, is as chair of the Long Range Planning Committee. And we've been holding meetings throughout the year, and we are moving forward. We think we've got to get the approval of the executive committee to hold this interregional virtual competition next year in 2027. So anyway, hi to everybody. Oh, I've got to pick somebody?
Yeah,
I just see one name. I don't know you, but I'm going to pick Chase Bishop.
That is one of our panelists. We'll be going to introducing our panelists
Okay,
in just
I'm
a
not
quick
doing
moment.
too well here.
No, it's okay. I mean, we could do John
Anyway,
Hussein.
I mean, I really don't know very many people on this. That's one of the reasons why Ellen and I are here. We're really on a learning curve about the National Association.
Well, that's
So
totally
please,
all right.
somebody volunteer.
Well, I'll volunteer since no one else is.
Sure.
My apologies for being a little late. I'm Joel Barrier. I'm the current president of the Nebraska Academy of Sciences, and I'm just here to learn a little bit more about what some of the other junior academies are doing.
All
I
right,
have no
I'll
idea who's been selected, so sorry.
all right. I'll jump in next then. I'm Amol Zanorkar. I'm also from Jackson, Mississippi, just like Dr. Cameron. But Dr. Cameron is the official representative of the MAS. I volunteered last time when I attended AJAS as a parent and met Bridget at the time, and she got me incorporated into the AJAS structure. So I'm just here to learn and know more about this exciting activity.
Has anybody seen the movie The Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou? There's a line in that movie that says, "Thank you for not picking me, so I'm going to volunteer now." So I'm John Ducey. I'm president of the Louisiana Academy of Sciences, not maybe 4 or 5 hours away from Joseph. And I am the president-elect of the National Academy. No, I have to say that right. The National Association of Academies of Sciences. When I say I'm president of the National Academy, people think I'm president of the National Academy of Sciences. That's not what we are, right? We're not the National Academy of Sciences. Okay. So we don't have a junior academy any longer. When we did, I happened to have been president in the 1970s. For that reason, I'm curious about what we might need to do to resurrect if we so choose over in Louisiana. So thank you.
And
So,
last but not least, I believe Marilyn.
You said, so you are the current president of NAAS?
I am the president-elect, Joseph.
Oh, congratulations.
You probably voted for me, maybe not. It was hotly contested. There were so many candidates, it was incredible. But thank you nonetheless. I appreciate your support.
At my age, it's difficult to remember what, but thank you. Congratulations again.
And
Okay, so
last but not least, Marilyn.
okay, Marilyn Akins. I'm president-elect of the Kentucky Academy of Science, and we have an active junior academy that's been there longer than I have, so I don't know when it started, but we're always trying to improve, and I was hoping just to get some ideas that I could share and maybe make ours better.
Well, wonderful. Thank you everybody for taking some time to introduce yourselves. My name is Bridget Moran. I'm the program manager for NAAS. You'll be seeing me a lot if you're involved with the AJAS. Let's take some time to learn about our panelists. So our panelists today are Caroline Grabowski, Chase Bishop, Eleanor Seacrest, and oh, we've lost. Did we lose one? Do we lose Michael Skipstead? No, he's there. Hi. And the other one is Michael Skipstead. They are all AJAS alumni, so they have previously attended, and their career has been very impressive so far. And they're going to tell us about their experience with AJAS and their experience in their careers. So let's introduce our first panelist. Caroline, would you like to go first?
Sure. So hello, everyone. My name is Caroline Karbowski. I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio, and I went to AJS in 2019. And then in 2024, I went back as an ambassador where I was an alumni supporting the program. And now I live in Boston. I work at Perkins School for the Blind, and I'm an orientation mobility instructor. That means I teach blind and low vision students how to travel using their white cane or other mobility devices. And before that, I was a biochem lab research assistant at Ohio State. I researched proteins that fix DNA. And then I was a biology major at The Ohio State University. And my project that I did for AJS back in 2019 was about cryopreserving pawpaw plants, which I did at the Cincinnati Zoo at their research place called Crew. So I have a lot of variety of interests, and I think that's like one of my strengths is just finding different aspects of my life and combining them together. And sometimes I do different jobs and different things, but things from my past always end up coming back that help out with those new skills. So I also have two companies. One's called C3D. We 3D print models for blind people and organize volunteers for that. And another one's called A Cube Design, and that is an NSF SBIR funded project working on making a Braille display that's more affordable. And that's how blind people can read Braille on their electronic devices. So, so just like, again, like lots of different things, I guess, like some, fun stories that I was remembering from the time or like challenges that I faced when I was working at the lab at Crew. The liquid nitrogen for cryopreserving our plants, it froze open. So it was just liquid nitrogen coming out of the tube. And I started, really panicking here because it froze open. So we had to use some hammers to hammer it shut. But we got it and it was okay. But it really helped having a grad student there who was staying calm, who was able to fix that and ended up not being that big of a deal. Another moment I had at the lab at Ohio State of doing all these mutagenesis of proteins. I had different test tube for every single protein mutant. And I mixed up two of the tubes. I, didn't put a label on, one of them and didn't put a label on another one. And then I forgot which ones they were. And I had already been working on this experiment for like 3 days. And I was like, oh shoot, now I have to start this over. So I had to go admit to the PI how I'm like, oh shoot, I actually, don't know what these are. And he said, oh, it's actually no big deal because at the experiment next week, we'll be able to retrofit and figure out what those proteins were. And I was like, oh, so I actually don't have to restart the whole project. So it does really help to just speak up, because some people have told me it's better, to change that pipette tip if you're concerned that it got contaminated, because you don't want to spend, millions of dollars, right? Or lots of time on something just having to throw it away again. It's better just to speak up early and build that trust with your mentor, to have good science versus just rushed science that you probably would have to throw away anyway because you weren't being careful. So those were some like hard moments, but since I've done it a few times, when I've had some like other mistakes where I, maybe didn't label something I forgot, it made it easy to tell that to other people at the lab. And they were always really nice and thankful that I told them, and were happy that I wasn't hiding it. So I just like to like encourage that. And if you ever have people come to you that admit mistakes, to not be, angry at them, because then they will not come back to you later and they might hide things. So that was always a kind of a stressful moment per se. And the other, I guess, kind of advice I like to share that I've done throughout these different career things is I'm always thinking about how to improve the systems, or how to connect people that may not be, in that field. So like a skill I would do at the lab is our experiments would be failing, our gels were all wrong. So then I would go to different labs and ask how they were doing it. Then we found the problem was our chemical was bad. Or even skills I use for data collection in the lab, I use now for IEP data with my students. I do a lot of observing of students and paying attention to detail, and I still use those skills. So these are all things that maybe initially, were skills I learned in a science environment, but I now apply them to an education environment or an entrepreneurship environment. So I like, even if you switch jobs or careers, you use those same skills.
Thank you, Caroline. Michael, would you like to introduce yourself next?
Sure. Hey everyone, my name's Michael Skibstead. A lot of people just call me Skibby though, so that works among other nicknames. But I just graduated from the University of Georgia last May and am thoroughly enjoying being unemployed for the next few months and traveling around. Just got back from Turkey where we were doing some cool surveys for this turtle called the Nile softshell. It's a massive, I encourage people to look this up actually. They're a very large 100 centimeter plus full size turtle that they get these really condensed white spots across the body, and it looks like an alien. They have this really slender snout, and their shell is almost like leather. It's flexible, soft shell. And so we were out there doing that. But you may have guessed my primary interest is turtles and tortoises. I've been really fascinated by them since first grade, since I learned to read effectively. And a lot of people say that's kind of a strange thing to get interested in, and I agree. It's pretty weird. I don't know what caused it or why it is. It's given me something in my life to think about. Why is that I've become so interested in these animals, which I'm pretty grateful for. But now that interest has evolved. I kind of consider myself someone that's interested broadly in general conservation biology, biodiversity, bioinformatics, and study of genomes and kind of everything, understanding animals and how the ecosystems are connected around us from the level of genes and how that scales up to landscapes and ecosystems is really interesting to me. And I like to adventure a lot. So a lot of the territory, the things that I do are just kind of crazy trips. And the past, we 2 days after school, I went down for 4 days work on a snapping turtle project. Then we were out with Jeff Corwin for a few weeks. I don't know, people know he's a big wildlife guy, promoted a project we were doing. Then I was off in Canada for a week and then up to Turkey. And now I'm back going to Belize soon, Mexico, El Salvador, and then Brazil in September. So it's amazing. It's cool stuff. Really fortunate to be able to travel like that. But some of the projects I've been working on, the big thing right now that's been pretty crazy, it's like I have to pinch myself, but I've been working on a book, and it's a book that's funded by Cemex. They're a cement company that's pretty prominent in Latin America, also in the United States. But they fund a nature book every year. And so they funded a book in 2000 called Biodiversity Hotspots, which is this great concept that was developed by a guy named Russ Mittermeier, who's become kind of my primary mentor. just incredible. He's like Tarzan and loves turtles too. But we're working on the 33rd edition of this, and it summarizes the last 12 books they've done. So kind of a treatment on nature, everything from the genes to the land to the ecosystems, kind of what I mentioned. But the coolest part about it is a coffee table book. We've got about 200 photos from the top National Geographic photographers, and they sent me the layout for this, and it's just incredible. So everyone here, if you want one, just let me know. I can get you that once it in a few months when it comes out. But other than that, I do a lot of research, conservation work, again, a lot with turtles. We work on a lot of different papers. So one paper, I'm working on 4 papers right now. One on quantifying the diversity of freshwater organisms in the southeastern U.S. with a bunch of different universities and Rewild, the big NGO. We're working on one where we've analyzed it's across all the genomes for all the genomes available for all turtles. We've looked at what are called orthogroups. So it links all the genes that are related because genes follow gene trees, right? They're all related across all the different species of turtle. And we've mapped out all these orthogroups. And now we're trying to look at how those orthogroups can inform us about tumor suppression in turtles. Turtles very rarely get cancer. And so we want to figure out how is it that that's evolved. So that's one analysis we're doing. We're doing one on population biology. That's also something I like to do. We use Bayesian inference, Bayesian models to better understand how turtle populations change over time, how they individuals survive and what the capture probabilities are, a lot of different things we can learn. And another analysis that we're doing is escaping me, but it's too much to keep track of. But again, very fortunate for that. And the biggest thing now I'm preparing to do is go off to Brazil. So I'll be working for a year in Manaus, in the heart of the Amazon, getting at one of the most interesting questions to me, the nature of turtle communication. And so turtles, specifically the turtles in the genus Podocnemus in the Amazon, produce low frequency vocalizations. And no one has actually proven why they do this. It may be to communicate. And so we're going to use some of these bioinformatic tools and some conservation technology, they're hydrophones, to actually measure the sound production and try to link that and see if the turtles are talking. And that's just fascinating to me. And yeah, how I got involved with AJS, again, like I said, I've been kind of obsessed with the turtles, maybe to an unhealthy extent since high school, and I connected with Greg Pauly at the Los Angeles Natural History Museum, and he got me involved with it, and it I think was really instrumental in getting me into the University of Georgia, and it made me stand out on their program, and I got actually a scholarship to be a pretty high level scholarship at the school, which is really cool. And I think that AJS helped a lot with that. And in terms of, I always have to tell a story. I'll try to keep it short, but in terms of one thing I'll talk about later is what a network or a name can do for you and getting to know people. I think that's pretty important. But the thing that just comes to mind was I was in Arizona in 2022 at the big turtle conference. They actually have a 300 people show up to this every year. It's called the Symposium for the Conservation and Biology of Tortoises and Freshwater Turtles. And we were looking for these fascinating turtles called the Arizona mud turtle. They just live it's literally 10 cattle tanks. So these ephemeral pools in the middle of the desert. I mean, it's the middle of nowhere. You would not think anything can survive where these turtles live. They're only active for 2 weeks of the year. The rest of the year, they're buried in the mud and it's just scorched. I mean, it's really incredible. And so I was there. I was in my car driving down about an hour and a half from where the symposium was. And we were coming up on the site. It's technically it's a restricted area. And we were thinking we probably can get away with this, but it may not have been a good idea. And right when we're pulling up to the site, the Border Patrol comes up. And I'm thinking, oh, this is not good because you can't even tell them you're looking for turtles. They can fine you and that's kind of silly, but it is what it is. And so the guy hops out of the car and he's an interesting person, like you might expect working in that job. But he starts grilling me about it. He's saying, "Oh, what's going on? Yeah, what are you doing?" And I'm trying not to tell him what we're doing, so it sounds more suspicious. And I've got all my stuff in my car because I was on the way moving to Georgia to UGA, so it's packed with stuff. And I'm with a guy that's a turtle expert from Austria who forgot his passport and ID. So it really doesn't look good because there's a lot of nefarious things that go on in this area. So I'm thinking, all right, I'm about to get arrested. You know, this guy's got a big AK-47 and it's not looking good. So he asked me to get out of the car and he's going back to his friend and everything. And he saw I had my lanyard on for the conference and he's looking at me. He's talked to me for 5 minutes at this point. He does not like me. He's really suspicious. And he sees on my lanyard, University of Georgia, because I decided to put it on there. And everything changed. He looks at me, he goes, UGA. He's like, go dogs, baby. I'm class of 1998. It's the best school. Are you where you're headed there? Are you a student there? And he just starts asking me all these questions and just completely forgot about everything else. And I eventually just cracked and I said, man, we're actually trying to go look for these turtles. I told everything about them. And he says, oh, okay, that's fine. We'll stand guard for you. And they waited for 2 hours while we went and looked for these turtles. And it was just, so that's, what's in a name? It can get you something, but just a funny story. There's a lot of those, but I've taken too much time. So.
Well, this is a good point. We should tell the newspapers to counteract all the negative press about going to college that college can actually save your life, right?
Apparently it can, yeah. I'm looking forward to future circumstances where maybe that comes into play.
Good story. Thank you. Michael, can you remind me what year you attended AJAS again?
It was 2021, so that was the one where it was not virtual until 2 weeks before, but still a great experience. And then 2025 too, but not as a student. So
Awesome. Thank you, Michael. And we'll introduce our next panelist. Eleanor, do you mind taking some time to introduce yourself?
Yeah, for sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Eleanor Segrist. I use she, her pronouns. I attended AJAS in 2018, and I'm originally from the state of Virginia. So I went to VJAS, and then I went to school in California. I just graduated Stanford about, God, 3 months ago now. And now I'm currently living in Seattle, Washington, and I'm working for SpaceX. I've been working for SpaceX for the past 6 months. And my dream is to be the first person on Mars. I've been absolutely obsessed with space ever since I was a little kid. I'm the middle of five, and that was like kind of the one thing me and my siblings could agree on was like watching the stars. And so it became like a really nice, like good way to bond with them. And through that, I became absolutely just obsessed. And I remember the moment I read The Martian as a kid, I like knew I wanted to go. But I had this kind of like moment of panic because I was really into robotics and I loved programming, but I also really wanted to be an astronaut. And I was like, how can I do both? And that's when I learned about mission specialist. So I specifically want to be the computer science mission specialist on the first mission to Mars. And so I specialize largely in propulsion software. So I write propulsion software for Starlink. And what I really love about this is I work at the hardware software interface. So understanding the ones and zeros and being able to interpret those and understand what those ones and zeros mean. So I got to coordinate with a lot of different teams, like the hardware teams, the guidance, navigation, and control teams, collision avoidance teams. And so it's really cool because I get to touch so many different parts of the satellite by just working like on one small tiny part. And I think that's super cool. Um, yeah, my uh, since I've been obsessed with space for so long, I have done most of my science fair projects about rockets. So my first two projects were about cold gas thrusters and optimizing novel geometries. So cold gas is just gas that flows through a system. There's no combustion. So it uses Bernoulli's principles of compression and expansion to be able to accelerate the gas to actually produce thrust. And then in high school, I did work on slosh mitigation. Slosh is the unwanted movement of fluid in a tank. So if you like take your water bottle and you shake it, the motion of the fluid inside is slosh. And that causes lots of problems when you're in microgravity because an object in motion tends to stay in motion. So once your fluid starts moving, then your tank starts moving, and then your whole spacecraft is moving. And it makes it really difficult to control. So I created a new technique to control slosh in microgravity, and I actually got to fly on the Vomit Comet to test it, which was a really super cool experience. And luckily, I did not throw up, even though that was a big concern. I managed to make it through successfully, and it wasn't until we touched back down that I started to feel nauseous. So I got really lucky there. But I did have a lot of very interesting experiences, mainly being a student researcher throughout middle and high school with gaining, what's the word I'm looking for? Like I had competed in a lot of different competitions. So I did like the Broadcom Masters National Science Competition. I've been to AJAS, I've been to BJAS, and I was well recognized. But when it came to actually getting my paper published, I struggled a lot with that because I wasn't ever tied to a university. Even when I ended up going to college and like working at a university like Stanford, since I was doing this research all on my own, a lot of papers were like, okay, but like who's your professor? Who are you working with? And that was like a little bit disappointing knowing that I was working with like real engineers at NASA and I was doing real research that was like widely seen in the field, and yet it still wasn't taken as seriously. Um, and so that was definitely like a huge learning curve of like how to present my work and how to be able to talk to all audiences, whether I was presenting to middle schoolers or to like people who have been professionals in industry for a very long time. Um, so I am still working on my research. It's taken a back burner now that I'm working full time, but I do plan to one day hopefully turn it into a startup, which would be really great. And yeah, I think those are kind of all the key points.
Amazing. Thank you, Eleanor. And last but not least, Chase, you are next up. Do you mind taking some time to introduce yourself?
Of course. I don't know if I might actually be least. After hearing all the introductions, I am last. I might possibly be least. I do apologize if there's any wind noise or bird noises. I'm currently on vacation at the Crystal Coast of North Carolina. So I'm just enjoying myself in nature. For those of y'all that do not know me, my name is Chase Bishop. I am from Brevard, North Carolina. I attended AJAS whenever I was in high school, attended in 2017, 2018. And then in 2020, a little thing happened a few months after all of that happened, after we attended that conference, but we don't talk about that. But I became interested in science at an early age, competed in competed in science fairs, and did a lot of science fair projects in high school, ranging from trying to generate energy for Martian colonies, trying to make food for Mars, and then pivoting to mosquitoes, how we could re attract and repulse them using magnetic fields and with sound frequencies. Then I went to college at Western Carolina University, go Cats. And I will say, Michael, I have not had any Border Patrol agents stop me and be excited about me being from Western Carolina University, but I have had some stuff at truck stops where people have been excited that I'm from Western Carolina. Really enjoyed my research that I was doing there. Actually, that's a lie. I despised grad school and had a really hard time with it until I realized what AJAS had given me. AJAS, I realized the reason that I loved it so much was because I was able to share science. Whenever I was in grad school, I really didn't have very many opportunities to share my science in a public forum. And it wasn't until I had a particularly bad thesis committee meeting where one of my professors asked me how I thought the research was going, and I told him I wasn't enjoying it. I didn't think it was going well. And he said, "You need to do some soul searching and figure out what will give you passion for science again." And I started looking back, going down memory lane, thinking about AJS. And the thing that I realized was that sharing science is what made me love it. And I was able to get through my thesis, finish up my master's at Western Carolina University on DNA replication proteins and bacteriophage, and then went to work at Pisgah Labs, where I had been working as a chemist for the past, or well, at that time, for the past 5 years. I started working at Pisgah Labs, a pharmaceutical manufacturing company, whenever I was a senior in high school because I needed a job because I wrecked the family car, and worked there for a number of years, got a lot of experience. And then after I had been working at Pisgah Labs for about a year full time, I realized I wasn't enjoying myself, that something was missing. And the thing that was missing was, again, what was missing in my grad school work, which was sharing science, what I had loved at AJS. And then an opportunity came up. A local small liberal arts college in my hometown, Brevard College, had put out a position for assistant professor of chemistry. It only required a master's degree. I applied, not expecting anything to come of it, had an interview. The interview went well. They had me come to campus. That went well. To my surprise and possibly their detriment, they said, "Sure, we'll take the kid." They took me, and I have just completed my first year as a professor and absolutely have loved it. And the highlight of being a professor this year was actually having students this year that did research on endolysins within bacteriophage that could potentially treat acne, and seeing them make a poster, present their research, and currently are in the process of getting their paper published is a full circle moment that really just fills my heart with joy. And I'm so thankful just for AJS for giving me that insight into what I enjoyed about science and then being able to carry that on to the next generation. And I'm sure I have plenty of funny stories that'll come up, but that's all that I have for right now for my introduction.
All right, thank you so much. And thank you to each of our panelists. As everyone can see, we have some very bright people who were AJS alumni. So we're going to go into the Q&A section. I have some questions prepared. However, if any of our attendees have any questions at any point, feel free to, as John just did, raise your hand or just come off of mute and ask your question, or you can pop it in the chat if you're more comfortable with that. Well, John, since you raised your hand, why don't we call on you?
Thank you very much. Wow, you guys are great storytellers. I'll be curious to hear you comment on if science helped you become great storytellers. But the question I really want to ask is, and I asked this question one day when I had an audience with James Watson. But Dr. Watson, what age were you when you knew that science was going to be your life? So I think, Michael, you were born with a turtle science in you. That's genetic. Eleanor, I think you might have mentioned it when you read The Martian, but it might have been earlier. And I'd like to hear from everyone, basically, to answer that question. What age were you when you knew science was for you?
I can kick this off. I definitely think I was born into it. I was born into a very maker family. We have a bits and bobs bin, and we were encouraged to go and like dig through it. If something broke at home, it wasn't a throw it out or buy a new thing. It was take it apart, figure out what's wrong, and fix it. Um, and I guess that might be leaning more engineering, but in my head, science and engineering, like they're hand in hand. And so it was just kind of always curating this curiosity of like, why are things the way they are? And like, how do they work? And wanting to pick it apart and understand. I'm very fortunate. I have two older siblings. They're 7 and 9 years older than me, but like they were my role models. And I saw them move through STEM and going to like introduce a girl to engineering day or full steam ahead in these conferences that got young girls into the sciences, and seeing them love it and be so successful and getting dirty and like picking things apart was so cool and inspiring. And I just knew I really wanted to do it. And that's actually why I love programs like AJS, because um, as Chase was saying, you get to go and give back. And I think that's something that's really beautiful, that is what continues to make people get into science and why we need programs like this, because not everyone is lucky to have had siblings who do it or just grow up in a maker household where like being scrappy is the norm, and doing science in your basement is normal. I'll never forget when I first started my coal gas rockets project. I wanted to do something with SDs, which are little like fire engine motors, but my mom told me I wasn't allowed to have explosives on the kitchen table. So I had to pivot, which is why we ended up with coal gas. But like, if you weren't lucky and happened to have a family like that, then it becomes hard. So I think AJS is really beautiful in being able to provide opportunities like that for students.
I can answer after that. I can say I was the opposite of Eleanor, that instead of taking things apart to fix them as a little kid, I just took things apart and then left them. So we had a few broken VCRs and a few other things that I just left. But I always loved to tinker. I always loved to do stuff. Found out that I loved science whenever I was in middle school and in elementary school. And it wasn't until I was going into middle school, or I was going into high school, that there was a program offered at our high school where you could do science research called the Time Science Program. And one of my teachers, Miss Smith, who was my seventh grade science teacher, she called me into her office and said, "Chase, you're going to do this program." And I said, "Well, what if I don't want to do it?" And she got very hushed tones, and she said, "I will hang you by your toenails if you do not do this program." So I was brought into science research with the threat of violence, it seemed. Um, I knew that I wanted to do science after I had my first science project that actually felt like it mattered, that actually felt like something important. Being able to come to AJAS, being able to present and meet other people, to meet Philip, to tour MIT, and then be able to see drawings on a board at MIT that echoed what I was working on. And just knowing that this was what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. It all just came from wanting to tinker, wanting to figure things out, and ultimately just feeling like you were doing something that mattered. That's what was the moment when I was a freshman in high school that it was, yep, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life.
I can go. So I think I have kind of a unique kind of perspective here where I'm not a practicing real scientist right now as I like work in schools. But I still use a lot of the practices I use from science research now, and I'm really involved in the entrepreneurship space. And so I would say as like a broader sense, it's like when did I know I was a problem solver or an innovator or a collaborator? I think that's kind of like the a core of a lot of what science is. I didn't like wake up and say like I'm going to be a biochemist. Like it was more when I was younger, I was very curious about things, always asking questions how things work, and then always, what's that? What's that? Or what's this? And not always maybe getting the answer. Like a lot of times people say like, I don't know. I don't know what this is. Or I don't. And so what helped though is my family would say, well, I don't know, but let's go do some things in the community and with people who might know those answers. So I was introduced to Cincinnati Observatory when I was a kid and would go there every month for kids events. We'd go to museums. We also just my parents would have friends who maybe worked in certain fields, and I got to job shadow some people that work with deaf students, people who work with blind students, um, just like our neighbors maybe had different careers. I think that's what helped was just seeing like, oh, if you don't know how to do something, you can ask some people what their jobs are like and having exposure to different careers. And I was lucky enough that I had exposure to careers in the blindness field in high school because a lot of people don't know about some of these careers because most of them are master's degrees that people just don't know about it if it's only a master's program. So I was lucky that I was exposed to that. And I think just I always knew maybe I was into like being entrepreneurship when I just had ideas and I kept following through with them. Like I've been doing one of my companies for almost 10 years now. And once asked me like when I was like 2 years in, they said, "Well, how long are you planning on doing this for?" And I said, "Well, I don't know, like forever. I don't really have an end date for it." So I just kind of always go to the next open door and see what's next and try to be flexible. Like even the career I'm doing now, I don't know if I'll do that forever and ever, but I know I will continue to do the skills and problem solving and collaborating with people wherever that next door is. Because I know like the jobs I might do in the future probably don't exist right now. They probably we haven't had the problems or the infrastructure to build those jobs. So I just try to stay flexible and do that.
Yeah, I guess I'll follow up. I mean, yeah, like I said, for me, it was pretty early. It sounds like a lot of people kind of the same thing that I got interested in turtles, but yeah, just an early development. And I went to a school that was elementary school that was really focused not so much on rigorous academics, which some of them seem to be, but it was more experience based. We did a lot of nature walks and got out in nature a lot outside for the first five grades that I was in up to fifth grade. And then I went to exact opposite, uniforms every day, middle school, really rigorous, structured, which was interesting. But I think that, yeah, for me, it was a little bit different than at least Eleanor seems like she had a really kind of quantitative. A lot of people, I think, have kind of a quantitative foundation in science, building things. But for me, it was a little more qualitative. And E.O. Wilson, someone is that some people from Alabama here may know E.O. Wilson, but he's has a quote in his book, Biophilia, that's not really a quote, but he talks about the naturalist Magellanic voyage that you can take just around a tree trunk. And I think in just the amount of a life that's just there and the amount of aesthetic and the beauty in that place. That was really what strikes me is early on. Those were the things, just the experience in nature that kind of inspired me.
Thank you all. Thank you.
John, you set me up really well for my first question. My first question was going to be, how does what you wanted to do in high school compare to where you are now? Is it the same? Is it drastically different? Was there something that didn't exist when you were in high school that existed later that you jumped on the opportunity? Any of our panelists who might like to answer that question, feel free.
I definitely think I'm still interested in the same things, but I believe my perspective on the way I pursue them has changed greatly from when I was in high school to where I am now. I used to be very gung-ho, believing that like the ends justified the means and I would push through to anything. And I still am very determined and very forward thinking, but now I believe that you are able to accomplish a lot more when you take breaks, and taking breaks is very healthy, and having a work-life balance is wonderful. So I've started indulging and enjoying and going on the side quests. So I now social dance a lot. I go climbing. I hike all the time. I've written a graphic novel. I do flying trapeze. I do all these like really random things that do end up actually like relating back. I'm working on my scuba license, which is required, fun fact, for being an astronaut. Social dancing teaches you how to interact with many different people and communicate. And one of the big things about being an astronaut is working in a small crew and like in a very tight quarter. Climbing helps you prepare for like the physical aspects of being an astronaut. You have to like go through physical tests. Graphic novels is a different form of communication. And I don't know, just all these really random little things in my life that I do see ending up coming back and reflecting and helping me towards my goals and my dreams. And I'm focusing a lot more now on burning on like clean energy, so say, and like positive motivation, as opposed to being driven out of like an anxiety or fear of not accomplishing this goal that I really want, but now more being excited to achieve it and enjoying that the path is not necessarily always straight and it winds. So definitely still interested in the same things, but I think my mentality and my lookout on those has changed very greatly since high school and middle school.
Eleanor, do you sleep?
Sometimes. Sleep is important. That's another thing. I do like sleeping now, and I do it. I'm not a night owl. Well, I am, but less so.
That's an impressive amount of things. That's cool.
I am a serial side quester. I like to have a lot of hobbies.
That was amazing, Eleanor. Michael, go ahead.
Yeah, same for me. I mean, I think I'm kind of it's been that my interest has been pretty centralized, but it's definitely grown into kind of side interests in terms of it's blossomed, we'll say that much. I mean, it began as just a fascination with turtles, and now, like I said in the beginning, it's kind of a broader interest in biodiversity and applying tools, everything from computational tools to even just writing about and communicating about why it's important to preserve the living earth around us. And so that's kind of it more it's definitely broadened my interest. And the yeah, I mean that I guess that's what I've got to say on that.
Awesome. I have another question prepared for you all. So how did you decide where to go to college and what to pursue? And did AJS inform that process?
So I can go ahead and start with that. I went to Western Carolina University because it was cheap. I went there because all of my dream schools rejected me. I wanted to go to MIT. I actually wanted to play football at MIT. The head football coach at MIT emailed me back, said, "We saw your game film. It looks pretty good. Until you get your ACT score above a 30, I will not look at the game film, or I will not email you back." So ended up going to the one school that I knew I could afford. That's why I ended up deciding that I wanted to go. And I ended up going to pursue chemistry because at that time I was working at physical labs. My boss said, if you get a job or if you get a degree in chemistry, you'll have a job waiting for you and we'll help support you financially to go to school. And AJS ended up supporting me, not necessarily in where I decided to go to school, but how I was going to approach going to school, how I was going to approach making connections with my professors, making connections with other researchers, and ultimately just finding opportunities to engage with the broader campus community and see where I could especially mentor other students, not necessarily even in an academic sense, but in just a spiritual sense and helping other people.
I also ended up getting rejected from my dream school. I also really wanted to go to MIT. I was deferred and then waitlisted and then rejected. And I remember feeling like the world was ending when that happened. And I was like, oh my God, everything is over. Um, but it ended up working out perfectly. And I would not be who I am today if I had not gone to the school that I went to. Um, and the decision honestly came down to that shift in mentality of starting to look at the side quests. I was looking between Caltech and Stanford, and Caltech is mainly math and mainly science, and it doesn't really have any of the kind of arts unless you go to like a neighboring nearby school. And I knew that the arts were really important to me. I've played violin since I was 5. I knew I wanted to be able to participate in an orchestra in college, and that wasn't an opportunity there. And so honestly, that is what ended up making me decide Stanford. The other school I was looking at was UMich, and I was trying to decide between those two. And I wanted a little bit more of like a smaller size compared, like UMich is bigger than Stanford. And so I don't know, I wanted a little bit more of like an intimate classroom space and setting. Um, I do think AJAS helped me decide where I wanted to go because I was able to interact actually with students who were like older than me and already thinking about planning on going to college. And so seeing what helped them decide and the way they made decisions. So like one student actually like pulled up his college decision making spreadsheet and he had like all the attributes listed out that he wanted and then like weighted settings for each one of like how important or less important he thought each attribute was. And so getting to have those opportunities was really helpful when making that decision. So
Bridget, I'd like to ask the presenters a question or two, if I could.
Go for it.
Okay, I was wondering, number one, how do you feel that the compensation that you're receiving, economic compensation that you're receiving now, uh, is it satisfactory, or do you feel that it is underpayment or overpayment? Also, how do you feel about being in a faculty position at a university years from now? Do you feel that you would be adequately compensated for your performance? And do you also feel that you will be able to write grants in your area and be funded through federal programs? 3 questions.
So I can start off with that kind of with the faculty question. I tell my students on a regular basis that I feel like I'm the luckiest guy in the world because I am getting paid to yap. I get paid to talk to them and be excited about chemistry and wear a funny shirt to work, and no one says anything to me, or at least about the funny shirt. They say plenty of things to me, but I just absolutely love my job. The money that I make, it's adequate. It's higher than public school, or at least in my area, it's higher than a public school. My wife is a public school teacher. So both of us, we're on modest incomes, but we both enjoy what we do. And it's enough for us to support just doing what we enjoy. And do I think years from now, my institution that I'll be at will be able to survive and be able to get federal grants? I have a great faculty that I work with, and they have been able to make Brevard College grow both in academic rigor and also in financial standing, where other small liberal arts colleges have fizzled out. Limestone University, south of where I'm at, it shut down a few years ago. Brevard College was a little bit smaller than that, and we've been able to add an engineering program and add a chemistry department, which add a chemistry major, which is how I got hired. So I think that if you have the right leadership team at your institution, you can survive, because uh, there's always going to be rough. There's always going to be change. There's never going to be a season that is not changing in academia or in teaching. The only thing that's going to remain the same is that there's going to be students that need to be taught or that taught. My southern accent came out a little bit.
What was your college, your university again, Chase?
It's Brevard College. So it's a small 4-year university or small 4-year Methodist college in Brevard, North Carolina.
North Carolina. Okay.
Yes,
Thank you.
sir.
Any others?
I can go, Caroline. Also, in the previous question about what college, like I was already in college when I went to AJS. However, I did pick the Ohio State University mainly because there were so many different choices that I could do. I didn't, I wasn't, if I wanted to change my major, I'd be fine. And they had both the School for the Blind and the Deaf nearby. They had, I was active in both their business college, their arts and sciences, the School of Music, and the School of Education. So I was able to connect with all different groups, and I was nervous about being in a big school, but then I realized that I can, connect with all these people. So I think that was why I went there, and I'm glad that I went there. And then for your questions too, I was like, for my current role teaching students, like I feel pretty content with my current like salary situation. But with a lot of things can be up in the air with students with disabilities right now, especially like threats to IDA, threats to a lot of things with Department of Education, where it is like stressful for us sometimes to like with our budgets and things to be able to purchase everything that we need, and things are just kind of uneasy right now, and that does affect also the funding for my companies too. So thankfully, we were able to get an NSF SBIR grant for A-Cube design, but there was also like a lot of moments where we almost didn't get it, right? It took a lot of planning to do. And C3D particularly also needs a lot of funding things well. So I spent a lot of time grant writing for both of those. And it can just be tricky because even if you can write the grant, you then have to have the teams to manage and run everything. So I just think it's important though for people to be aware that blind people are everywhere in our society, and it's sometimes if someone something's not accessible, sometimes people say, oh, I've never had a blind person come to this museum, so therefore I don't think we need to put braille here. But maybe they're not coming to the museum because there's no braille because there's nothing accessible, or like the spaces were not designed for them. Having things like changing tables for adults at places. That's probably one of the biggest barriers for our students is we can't go to a lot of public places because we don't have a changing table. We don't have wheelchair accessible places. We don't have some stuff. So just really thinking ahead of time and making that a priority. And that can be tricky to do if you just, aren't aware of those needs. So I like to just always emphasize that, people with disabilities are everywhere and want to be in society, and we can do a lot to improve that accessibility if we prioritize making things accessible and prioritizing funding.
Thank you, Caroline. I want to say that I congratulate you, and I have a great deal of respect for you. Anyone that works with disabled people, particularly blind area people, and really, I think they deserve quite a bit of support. And I hope that you're successful in getting more support because those people really need it.
Thank you. Yes, it's so fun. I love problem solving. I love hearing just the way that people think of things. It's that's why I like working in the blinds community because it's a lot of problem solving.
Yes, ma'am.
How would you cross the street? How would you do this with the screen
Yeah,
reader? And that's exciting. Thank you.
I agree.
If I can say one thing on that, it's hard to me making less money than I am right now. It's zero. But I think that in college, at least, I did okay with internships. I think it's good to, if you are in the ecological sciences, biology, it's effectively biology, but ecology can be challenging. It oftentimes runs sort of perpendicular to economic gain or profit. But if you're smart about internships, I was able to get a decent amount of internships that paid over the summers, and that helps. But I think that the main thing is a lot of people want their kids or they want to do doctor or lawyer or anything. And I mean, if that's your passion, that's great. But I think that that if you're creative with your passion, and I've done a podcast, maybe it'll come up later, but we've talked to about 130 people that are the top of their field, biologists and conservationists, a lot of it. About half of them say follow your passion, and half of them say be smart about how you follow your passion. Because you have to make a living, and that's just the reality of it, and it's challenging in this field. But I think if you're creative with it, it can definitely work out, and you can make a comfortable living for yourself and also pursue the thing that you love. I'm trying to start a consulting company right now, essentially just taking the connections we've made through this podcast and just talking with people and taking contracts to help them with their problems. So that's where I'm thinking about this right now. And again, I think it's just if you don't stop pursuing something and you're creative with it, with the ecology work, you can kind of do that anywhere if you're passionate about it, but also smart with it.
Please tell me your podcast is called Turtle Talk.
It's close. I'll put it in the chat. Polonia Cast.
Ah,
We didn't hear from Eleanor.
I think at least, how do I word this? I wish I'd had more of a financial education growing up. I think that was something that was missing from the school system that I went to. I went to public school in Northern Virginia, and I was very fortunate and very lucky that the science fair opportunities that I competed in had really good like scholarship prizes that I was able to win to help me go through school. And I was very fortunate that someone did tell me that scholarships are out there and I was able to look for them and find them on my own and apply for them, and that set me up for success going into college. Um, and I do think like student loans are something that like everyone knows about, but I don't know. I think navigating student loans and figuring that out for the first time on my own was something I wish I'd had like more support in. And there are like really good like YouTubers and resources online. I don't know any of their names off the top of my head, but I would highly recommend just like Googling for a YouTuber. And that's like kind of low-key helpful, especially with like ChatGPT nowadays too. That also is very helpful for figuring out those kinds of finances and stuff. Um, I, yeah, just working on paying off student loans and yeah, slowly making my way forward. So.
Thank you. Philip, I see your hand raised, or possibly Pam.
No, no.
No, it's fine.
Well, here, let me put my hand down. There we go. First, Chase, Caroline, Eleanor, Michael, I am so proud of each of you and the work that we've done and the work that you've done since I've met you all at various AJAS events. Here's my question for each of you. As young career professionals, how will the rapid advances in artificial intelligence affect your future career in the next several years? What are your thoughts?
I can get started with this one. I feel like as someone who writes software for a living, there is a lot of contention as to whether or not AI is going to replace me completely, because AI is pretty good at writing software. I particularly feel rather safe because I work at the very low level, like ones and zero level. And so you have to do a lot of data sheet reading, and the data sheets are not always accurate to the hardware that you're actually working on. And so if AI is attempting to model off of an inaccurate data sheet, it will continue to be inaccurate again and again and again. And it's impossible that you're ever going to have a perfect data sheet on the first try because we're humans. And it's possible that like the ICDs, integrated circuit designs are wrong, and you can't AI is not good at going from an ICD to a data sheet that has all the information about this circuit. So I think there would need to be some serious advances in that realm before my job would be changed. I do already see, though, a movement towards using AI for simple coding things. Like if you aren't having to work at that hardware software interface and you're just writing an alarm that alerts on like a specific channel when it goes above a certain bound. Like that's very easy to do, and there's no reason why you shouldn't use AI for something like that. But I do believe we still need to continue to think critically about the way we're using it, because at the end of the day, that is still code you are responsible for, and you are putting it on a satellite that like could have serious consequences and effects. So I think as long as we're taught that AI is not a replacement for intellectual growth or intellectual like problem solving or thinking, I don't see much of a problem with it. I think it is a good tool to use. I do have a lot of problems with people who are going to school for like an AI degree because I have seen some of the classes and literally they're just using AI to like plug and chug an AI homework problem. And I don't really get that. Um, I think learning how to prompt AI is more about intuition and like critical thinking skills as opposed to it is a degree that you could get unless you're working on actually creating the algorithms for the forefront of AI and like designing new like large language learning models, and then that's like a very different question. But then my take is you have to be like in a PhD for that kind of thing. So yeah, sorry, that's my long-winded ramble on AI.
So I have had a bit of a journey when it comes to AI. I started out very much as a Luddite that I did not want to touch it. I did not want to look at it. I did not like even the word. As I started planning my curriculum, I planned on having everything via being turned in on paper so as to avoid AI. And ultimately, I found out that that was untenable and that it was kind of in the water we were drinking in the college educational scene. And what I was convinced of by one of the men who I work with, Dr. Or he's not a doctor, Jim Brooks. He's our IT specialist at Brevard College. He just showed us, he said, you know, AI is going to be here to stay, and it's a tool that you need to teach students how to use rather than telling them that if they even look at it wrong, that they're going to have an academic infraction. So one of the things that I had done is I showed my students how to, or I asked them to write a paper on one of the ideal gas or one of the gas law makers. So, for example, um, Boyle. I had them write a paper on Robert Boyle and how he was able to develop Boyle's law, kind of combining chemistry and history. And I said, I want good primary source literature and I want good peer reviewed papers. And all of them came to me and they said, we can't find anything. And I said, perfect. This is the perfect opportunity for me to show you how to use AI for research. And that has been the biggest advancement that I have seen that AI has been really good for is helping you do research, especially the background research. And I've always had the biggest fear, even whenever we were doing science fair projects, that I'd be in the middle of the project and find out that it's already been done. Whereas AI has been a really good tool at figuring out, okay, where has this been looked at before? Has this been investigated before? And if it hasn't, where's our opening that we can do it? So I think that it can be like any tool, it can be abused. And I've given this analogy to my students. I give it every syllabus day that AI is like a personal trainer. If you have a personal trainer that you know how to talk to, and you have a personal trainer that can tell you what exercises you should do, you can end up getting stronger. If you tell your personal trainer to go to the gym and do your bench press for you, to do your squats for you, you're not getting any stronger and you're wasting your money, you're wasting your breath, and you're wasting an education. So if you're using AI as a tool, fantastic. But if you're using it as a replacement, I think you're in trouble. And I think that's what a lot of people are realizing now.
I think in some ways the AI is making it easier for people that use a critical mass of neurons to think, easier for them to get jobs in some ways. I mean, it's definitely like Chase is saying. I mean, it's so easy to rely on it. In fact, we were out filming with Jeff Corwin to promote a project we're working on, and we were with this guy that also has a big YouTube channel. He's a big guy in Miami. He has a lot of animals, and I've never seen someone that's so dependent. I mean, it's terrifying. This guy was he was not even communicating in sentences to me. He was just looking at the AI to make a script for a video we were taking. And he said, watch this. He put the prompt in and it gave him a 25-minute video script. And he couldn't think of a sentence to put together to talk about what we were doing without reading off the script. And it was just really something to watch. Jeff Corwin, has done this for his whole life and could just talk about it. And I mean, I was shocked by how dependent this guy was, and I think that's just one example of how people are really coming to rely on it. But it's definitely a useful tool, like in the coding that I do, which is not, I mean, it's not programming. It's more just using the coding interface to answer questions. It can be helpful, but with a caveat, because you don't learn it if you're really trying to rely on it like that, because you have to struggle through YouTube videos and read a book, and you have to come up with a lot of wrong answers before you get a right one and spend the time to really understand and ingrain what you're trying to do in your head. And that's what makes you an expert. It doesn't just answer the question. You have all the bits and pieces that are necessary for getting the wrong answer to get the right one. So I think that that's one piece of it. And then the other thing was just I think that there's more and more now a need to focus on the the qualitative aspects that the AI can't capture, and just the human experience. And I'm not even going to begin to say what that is. I don't think anyone's figured that out, but there's definitely an element of what it means to be human that the computer can't capture, the algorithms can't capture. And those disciplines that really call for that, communicating and speaking, I think, is one of those things, are going to be more and more important. So there needs to be emphasis on that. And you can't rely on the computer. You have to think critically in order to exercise those things. So take it for what it is.
So it's Caroline. On to the science side, I'm always very excited about PyMol and how it's being used for predicting protein structures and like protein folding, and just overall within science, the ability to model something and to then decide what you actually want to spend your time and money on a real experiment like a wet lab. So you could, save a lot of time and money by doing that. And I think that's just it's pretty exciting. In the blindness community, it has been really big with all the image descriptions that are available with AI. Like meta glasses have been big. The ability just to, when you have a picture, like online shopping, you could just use the AI to describe the photo and learn, is this a can or is it a bag or is it, a jug? Or when you have like a meme or some like silly things on the internet you just want to know, you don't always have to call up your parent, call up a friend to find out what this is. You just could have the access right there with it described to you. I actually send photos to my blind friends all the time, and they even send me photos all the time. And we just send image descriptions back and forth that have been AI generated that we fix. We also do write like official image descriptions as well, like ones if we know the context, put it in. But it's been really, exciting for like many of my blind friends to be able to be photographers, take photos, and learn about what's around them. And you have that privacy, you have that freedom to just get that information whenever you want and not have to be dependent on someone else. However, it is always best when someone can just write the description for you, but it does make that a faster process. It's also been used within 3D modeling. We can just describe the 3D model and learn if it's a model you want to print instead of printing it out and feeling it and spending all that time. So just a big important thing though is that making sure these systems continue to be accessible. I have some blind friends who work for some of the leading AI companies, and they make sure it's screen reader accessible. It'd be really bad if all these tools come out and then blind people can't use their magnifiers or screen readers to access them. But then we also have to consider, like, with all of the, environmental impacts that AI can have, and with climate change, like that will, disproportionately affect disabled people with, global warming, with air quality. And we're not always like thinking of that. Like the people who, like when we have these new things, like if we don't have better ways to generate energy that are more renewable, it's going to hurt disabled people a lot because they're, depending on what their conditions have, those changes could affect them more. And so we just have to be really cognizant of that and consider it. And just as it, can provide a lot of access for blind people, AI has really improved things for, sighted people as well. So we all just have to just kind of decide, like, is this tool helping us or is it not? And how can we be strategic?
Uh, Ellen, I see that your hand is raised.
Thank you. First of all, I want to say what fun it has been to listen to all of these stories because I think we all had great experiences in science, mentors and people who told us to sign up for stuff and all of that. And it's so much fun to hear all that. The excitement in your voice is exactly what we love about science. And I think that even though I've never been to the one that is hosted by the National Association, I think when students get together and can share like that, it does set them on fire. They start seeing themselves and identifying with that kind of thinking. And that's a big deal. And I think that's one of the things that we cherish about these junior academy opportunities. And I salute you. I believe it's Philip that's been the chair, or is it Michael? Okay, I've lost some of the details, but the persons who take on the role of making it happen, that's a big deal. And I thank you for those roles. What I wanted to say, two things, if I may. One is that even though I didn't raise my hand on the National Academy Junior Academy event, we have participated for decades in the Junior Science and Humanities Symposium sponsored by the Tri-Services. And that is a similar thing where our state winners would then go to the national competition. And at that level, they could hear other students. And unfortunately, it was canceled this year. And so we began to do the virtual that I mentioned. And one of the takeaways from our virtual was that people said they needed more opportunities to do this kind of get together, talk, listen, and hear what other students are saying. And so if we have a mission in the coming year to grow our virtual interregional junior research forum, it is to open up more of what we're describing here. Because truly, it's great to sit there and talk to somebody one-on-one about their research and what they've done, but that's no longer cost effective sometimes, or accessibility. Can you do that if if travel becomes a prohibitive component of that? So I think opening up a second wave of more virtual is something that makes sense to me. Now, obviously, I'm a proponent now. But I want us to say that I hope that some of these same elements of sharing excitement and listening to what other people have said, validating what they've seen and done, is a big deal. And so I just want to say how much fun it is to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen. Your comment is offering a shift that I think I would like to kind of ask our panelists about. So I know Chase, you had a virtual experience with AJAS. I think everybody else was in person. Oh no, you're muted, Chase.
No, Michael was there. I was in person all 4 years. I was there during February of 2020 before the craziness happened.
Yeah.
So if we could all go around, if you could talk about your highlight experience from your time at AJAS, like what your best experience was. And then also if you could give, I know some of us are sending some students in the future years. So could you also give us just a tidbit of advice for a potential student or people advising students on how to make the most out of an AJAS experience?
I'd love to go. So I think my big highlight moment is I really even looked at the agenda for AAAS, and I wanted to see what scientists are there that I could connect with. I was just searching the agenda, and I found there was a blind geneticist talking about accessibility with science. And so I just messaged him on LinkedIn. He replied about an hour later. We met up like 3 hours later, had a great conversation. And then a few months or so later, we submitted a joint proposal to speak at CSUN. Unfortunately, he was unable to make it with COVID. So then I was presenting his slides at CSUN. I'm like, wait, what is going on? And we've continued to stay in contact and been at conferences. And I think the theme is like, don't think, oh, I'm just an undergrad or high school student. These scientists don't want to talk with me. No, this guy was so excited to talk with me. He's been so helpful and a great colleague. And, I think a lot of times the scientists like meeting younger people that do their same research because then they're able to pass the baton, right? And, it's exciting when you meet other people to know that your work's still continuing. So never think that you're not cool enough or something to talk with these people. They're probably just really excited you have the same niche interest.
If I could echo that, I think one of the highlights of AJAS was that instead of feeling like you were at a competition, you were not treated as a contestant being judged, you were being treated as a peer. You were being treated as a colleague, presenting very important research there. One of the highlights for me, or the February 2020 AJAS, was that I got to meet Dr. Dan Strickman, who had written the only other paper on mosquito magnetoreception. And he was able to look at our research, which was done 20 years after his was done, and be able to discuss with the primary author of the only other person who had researched it. And sadly, Dr. Strickman passed a few months later. So that was the only opportunity I was able to meet with him. And it was just an incredible opportunity to be treated as a peer and present that research. So, advice to be given to future AJS fellows is make the most of it and just connect with the people. And like you said, Caroline, don't think, oh, I'm just humble. I'm just a humble person from this. I'm a humble researcher who has a small science fair project. No, you're a peer, you're a scientist, and that's why you're there. There's a reason that you're there, and you need to make the most of it.
I'll say a quick bit on that. I just before I forget too, there seem to be a lot of people from the southeastern U.S. here that, if I'm understanding it right, are trying to get more integrated with the AJS or develop the programs more. And I'm happy to. There are a lot of people that I work with are at universities in the southeast, and a lot of them doing turtle work, genetics work, conservation biology. If there are any students or high schoolers that are interested in that in the Southeast, I'm happy, more than happy to put someone in touch. And there are a lot of great people. I work on a lot of projects in the Southeast, and we need all the help we can get with that and more people to appreciate the beauty and the nature that's here. But for the AJS experience, I think that yeah, I mean, like everyone has said, essentially, don't be shy. One of my best friends in high school. He was the president of the Delta Tau Delta fraternity at University of Alabama, which is about as serious as it gets. And someone that you just sort of look at. I mean, he's an amazing guy, but you look at and it's like this guy's an interesting person, but he told me something that's probably the best thing in my life that I've heard is just you just have to be confident and you just have to do it to be it. And it really is that simple. And if there's someone that's intimidating to you, and that's completely normal, just go up and start that conversation. It doesn't matter how awkward it is at first, and just pausing that initial cascade that's the only step and it's the best step. And a lot of these professionals really they want to talk with all the young people, and there doesn't need to be any of that barrier. I mean, someone like I brought up Russ Mittermeier. He's kind of been my primary mentor, and we did a podcast with him, and that was kind of how I got to know him really well. We did 3 hours discussion with him, and that's something useful too. Find a creative outlet for your interest to connect with people. But Russ was someone that when I did the intro, I had to redo it 5 times because every time I introduced him, I started choking up or I would say a word wrong because this guy's just a legend. And I was so afraid of it. And just all the stuff that he's taught me over the past few years and how much I've been able to work with him has been incredible. And it was just getting over that little hump of definitely being intimidated at first, and then you realize, wow, these people are actually really cool, and they want to work with the young people in particular. So that's what I have to say there, and just be open to talking with people and try to. It's tough in high school because you're just competing. It's cutthroat. You're just trained to just try to do better than the other person. But at these meetings, just come with a mindset of everyone's doing cool things and really try to listen, and you come away with some really interesting friends and stories.
My mom always used to say that everyone uses the bathroom the same way, and or like they put their pants on one leg at a time. And it's like a really silly phrase, but I don't know. I do think it helps like humanize everyone. And I think that's always really important to know. It's really easy to have imposter syndrome or the duck syndrome or think like you're the only one who doesn't belong in the room. But think unfortunately this is just one of those things that like gets better with time. And even nowadays I still have a little bit of that. And like there are some days I'm like, ooh, I feel really silly. I feel like a silly goose. But I think trying to work on the way you frame your self-talk is very helpful. I used to, for a very long time, be like, oh God, I'm so stupid. I don't say I'm stupid anymore. I'll say I'm a silly goose, but I won't say I'm stupid. And I think that's been really helpful. So I don't know, just trusting in your like self, and you worked really hard to get to where you are, and you're going to continue to like strive, and just being comfortable that it is a journey and you're not going to know all of it all at once. So
Eleanor, mental health professionals say the person you talk the most to is yourself, and you must be positive. Good job.
Bridget, I'd like to really quickly say, I'm sorry, I apologize. I have to rush to another meeting, but I really, really have enjoyed this presentation. I think more of this needs to go on. And I want to congratulate all of the young people. And I hope that when you reach a certain age, you will be feeling the same way. I'm very happy to see that young people enjoy research as much as you all do. I had the same feelings when I was at that stage. And I've gone through it quite a bit since then, grants, living, etc. I still feel strongly, but AI, quite a few other problems. I'm very concerned about the future. And I'm very happy to see that young people, at least some of the young people, are still feeling that same motivation that I had when I was at that stage. And again, I apologize for having to leave, but thank you very much.
Thank you, Joseph.
All right, bye-bye.
Great to meet you.
Same here.
Phil, I see your hand raised.
Yes, thank you. Uh, just a note and then a question. Ellen, in answer to your question, Dan Poole from Utah is the current AJAS committee chair, with myself and Bridget and a number of others helping him on almost a daily basis. Here's my question to my 4 AJS fellows and 4 former fellows in residence. What is missing from the current AJAS program?
That is a really good question, Phil, and I would like to get on to that. So what's missing from the AJS program / what are some things that organizers or individual students can do to better utilize those days in person during the AJS conference?
I'm gonna hop on this one quickly because I do have to run exactly at 2 PST. I'm sorry. Another meeting got scheduled on my calendar that's like actually conflicting right now that I should be at, so I'm gonna speed run this. But for my AJS experience, something that I really wish, Virginia only sent 1 student. So I actually was missing a lot of that sense of camaraderie that I saw other states who sent like larger groups together. I was very lucky that I was adopted by Kentucky and pretty much hung out with them the whole time I was there, and it was really great. But I do think that for like the smaller state academies who are sending to AJS, you should send at least like 2 or 3 students. I think it really helps build like a bonding experience, and it makes you feel easier to integrate and less scary when you are walking around at the conference. Like you'll have a friend to go like walk up to all these cool scientists with together, and I think that's really helpful. Quite honestly, I think giving the students more free time to explore AJS and NAAS during that time would have been great. There was a lot of very scheduled activities, which was wonderful, but I wish I'd had more time to just kind of like wander and talk to the people who were like interesting to me. So yeah, I think that's my advice. And yeah, thank you guys so much for this. This has been a wonderful experience. So sorry to run.
That's all right. Thank you so much, Eleanor. You were a great panelist. We were really lucky to have you. Thank you.
So something I think AGS could have is a pin exchange like ISEF. I think it's a great conversation starter and fun activity. Just encouraging kids to bring things from their hometown. And then I think there could be some strategic like conversations ahead of time about, okay, let's go into the conference with intention. What problems do you have now? What help do you need? Where do you need to go to get that help? Oh, let's look at the conference presentation list. Let's look at all the people who are presenting. Could any of these people help you? Okay, let's LinkedIn message them. Let's try and set up some meetings. Let's like go in with some intention. And then like the breakfast with scientists could also be like more intentional too. Like let's pair up with scientists that have like this direct question or need that you have. 'Cause sometimes it kind of feels like you meet these people and you're like, I don't know what my follow-up should be, or like, oh, I have this business card. What do I do now? And like, or I should maybe reach out to them, but I don't really have a question to ask them. I don't really know. Like, but if you come in with like, I have these three problems and I need this help, like maybe because that's like a skill you can use in other places to make it more meaningful.
I think when I attended this year, the biggest thing that I kind of missed because I was from an earlier time at AJS from 2017 to 2020, that was kind of missing was a little bit of, this is going to sound odd, but just pomp and circumstance. Uh,
Hmm.
like whenever I went to AJS in 2017, when we were ate dinner in the library, that was the first time I had ever had a three-course meal, and I was wearing a suit. It was the first time that I was ever wearing a suit out in the city and not to a funeral. It was just a time that you actually felt not only like you were a scientist, but you felt like you were a professional. So kind of that pomp and circumstance, and then the camaraderie that was developed, not even just from your own academy, but meeting other academies at a dinner table, sitting around a large dinner table and eating. Because usually what ends up happening is that if you only have one dinner, you end up having cliques that form, and cliques are no fun in high school. They're no fun as an adult. So just a little bit more pomp and circumstance.
I'd say, yeah, one thing that was really great in Boston, I think, was kind of having a third space almost, in the sense that there was that upstairs room where everyone
Hmm.
kind of came together and played games. And then also the downstairs, that was a little more iffy because they seem to not really want us in there. But I think that was something I observed. I got to know a lot of those kids and connected with them on social media and everything, and that was all through just having that area to play games and to just talk and converse. And like Chase was saying, if you don't have a place like that to congregate or more events where people can socialize, then it becomes a little bit, you just kind of run with your academy, and it all sort of is, they're in different pods, but a little bit of that mixing was really good. And the other thing I would say maybe is just, yeah, I mean, as many people as we can inspire and get excited to come to these. I don't know what the social media presence is for the AJS, but I don't know if there's an Instagram or how that is, because that's what everyone's on now. And just to advertise it, especially, I mean, here in the Southeast, there Georgia has seems like a decent amount of opportunities, but that for the Alabama is a great example of this. The Alabama has more freshwater biodiversity than most countries. There's 15% of crayfish diversity, 15% of freshwater mussel diversity, a good chunk of the more turtles in any U.S. state, and there are only 3 countries with more turtles. Now, I'm a little biased, but that's fascinating. And you could have thousands of people deployed to study these things. And they could be high schoolers at all levels, and they're very few. There's Auburn. There aren't many people at University of Alabama. That's pretty much it that are doing work with these organisms. So there's a huge amount of room to recruit tons of people. And that's, I think, something that I don't know how we do it exactly. I think social media could help with that, but maybe more of a social media presence that could be helpful.
I have a question about the conference, the AJAS meeting, about what's missing.
Yes.
So is there a list of presenters that's sent out ahead of time? I'm noticing conferences are using these apps and you don't even get a list of presenters ahead of time. Is that still available to the presenters so they can see other people in their area?
Ellen, there's a yes and a no to that question. One thing that we need to be very careful about with AJS is that you're dealing with minors.
Right.
And so
I mean their contact information. I mean just their name and what time they're presenting and when their poster is going to be or whatever.
That does go out on the app. Absolutely. You've just got to be a little careful because you're dealing with minors.
Right. Well, I'm glad your app is working like that because my app didn't work like that. And another thing I've noticed at other conferences is having a consultant lounge where faculty could talk to faculty about how to build up their programs. Are y'all doing something like that?
Well, before we get into that conversation, I do want to say that we are up on time. I'm happy to stay a little bit longer and extend the conversation, but nobody is required to stay. But I do want to say I put some announcements in the chat. And I want to thank all of our panelists for coming and speaking. Really appreciate it. That was fabulous. We learned so much. And I want to thank the Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation for their generous support for capacity building at state level. All of our member academies can take advantage of a coaching call. We get 2 a year that can be used for junior academy planning as well. If you look in the chat, that's the last link in that block of text I have sent. But that being said, that's the official end of this webinar. People can stay if they want to for a little bit longer, and we can discuss what Ellen just brought up. But thank you all so much for this riveting conversation.